Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this next presentation. Today, we are going to be going over a presentation on contacting professors for letters of recommendations, or for brevity, RECs. This is a very, I would say, stressful thought process. How does one go about asking a professor for a letter of rec? Knowing that they are required for graduate programs, for internships, for scholarship opportunities. It's a very, very scary and frightening process for a lot of students. Hopefully today, after this presentation, you'll feel a little bit more confident and comfortable going to a professor for a letter of rec. I also understand that though this presentation is specifically geared and tailored towards asking a professor for an academic recommendation, a lot of this skill set can translate and transfer over to other areas as well, such as asking a supervisor, mentor, or anyone else that isn't within specifically the academic realm. Once more, my name is Chad Ngo. I am the current graduate assistant for the Allied Health Academy and a Master's of Public Health candidate. I am going to be graduating in May 2017. So if you're watching this at home prior to May 2017, I'm still the current grad assistant. If you're watching this after May 2017, I would have already graduated. And it is my pleasure to walk you through this process as not only a fellow first-generation college graduate who in his time has had to ask for so many letters of recommendations, but also as someone who has that experience and is, I would say, pretty comfortable now asking for letters of rec. And I can share a lot of tips and tidbits that I wish someone would have told me in undergrad. And I promise you, it is one of those experiences and skills that once you continually ask for letters of recommendation, you start to feel more comfortable with it. It's not something that scares you anymore. So let's go through the presentation today and break down what you need to know. So overview. These are kind of the points and the objectives and I guess overall of the presentation, and which I hope you will take away from it. So the overview, I would hope that someone going through this learns about the process of requesting for a letter of recommendation in the academic context. I hope that you walk away being able to identify what professors could write your recommendation, that you understand the steps that lead to acquiring a letter of recommendation, and you feel comfortable with the process of requesting a letter of recommendation. And hopefully you can pay this forward and pass it on to someone else who will get to that point where they may have questions about how to secure a letter of recommendation and go about that process. So let's start off with a good question. What is a letter of recommendation? According to WikiHow, a letter of recommendation is needed for applications such as graduate schools and full-time positions. Professors may be a good candidate to write a letter. The steps below, credit to WikiHow, can be followed to assist you in requesting a letter. Generally, graduate programs require 2 to 3 letters of recommendation, with at least 2 of them being from an academic source and/or professor. This is a general blanket statement. You're definitely going to have to double check with your specific program or programs that you're interested in to see what they list and require. But from my experience, navigating grad school applications, helping friends navigate grad school applications, and just overall learning about it for these series of presentations, it's typically 2. Fortunately, being an active member of the Allied Health Academy guarantees you 1 letter of recommendation that is going to be signed by Dr. Chanjasiri and the letter committee. So therefore, it counts as an academic letter of recommendation. So you can kind of rest assured that that is something that is potentially guaranteed. You do have to apply for it, for that letter of recommendation from the Allied Health Academy when the time rolls around in the fall and or spring. We definitely shoot out a hard deadline in the newsletter as well as the group meeting, so keep an eye out for that. There is a process to go about requesting that specific letter from us, so just be cognizant of that. But it should take a lot of stress off your plate because it's just another component of the graduate application process that is very daunting and very challenging to students. Letters of recommendation typically can be written electronically and or submit or written on paper. So depending on the program, they may want you to, the university, the school, the program may want you to submit an electronic letter. So how you would navigate that is that when you're at that point where you're filling out all your information for your application, it comes to the letters of recommendation page. And if it's electronic, it'll ask you to list 2 to 3 individuals, provide their emails, and then an email will be sent to those individuals to submit an electronic recommendation. Some universities, in my experience, the Cal States, will require, and some private will require a paper version. So what this is that you will actually have to print out a few forms that you have to hand deliver to a professor, asking them to fill it out and then to mail it off. Either they mail it off to the department and or they write the letter, they put it in an envelope, they seal it, and they hand it back to you, which you are to include in your overall packet that you mail off. So those are typically the 2 ways to go about how letters are requested and or submitted, electronic and or paper. So this gives you a very kind of good intro understanding of what to expect. Okay, so quick activity. As you know, with a lot of my presentations, I really stress and encourage students to identify strengths and skills that they have in order to really understand themselves so they can present a better package to professors and their colleagues and peers and whoever they may be meeting about their professional and academic and professional goals. So with this quick activity, I want you to take a minute or two to list out 5 strengths that you have in relation to your major. These strengths could be anything ranging from empathy, the ability to understand and feel others, to time management, maybe leadership. Maybe you're very skilled with a specific statistical program in your field, such as SPSS, which manages stats. Maybe you're good at teaching others. So take a moment to list out the 5 strengths, and I'll let you write that right now. And if you can't identify 5 strengths initially, that's completely fine. List as many as you can. Here at the Allied Health Academy, we're really hoping that by the time you graduate and move on to your graduate program, you'll be able to list so many strengths. And I understand that as a first-generation student of color, it can be difficult oftentimes to be asked to talk about yourself. But please start to embrace that discomfort and get in the habit of listing your strengths, talking about your goals and your plans so you can become a better professional for all the people that you'll be helping. Okay, so at this point, you should have listed out as many strengths as you can, up to 5. And now I want you to list out 2 to 3 classes that you've taken and that you've really enjoyed. It may even be a current class you're taking, depending on when you're watching this in the semester. So take a moment to put down 2 to 3 classes, list them down, that you have liked. And they don't have to be in your specific major. So if you took an elective, like you took a 3-series Spanish course, or you took a history course that you really enjoyed, or maybe it's a nutrition class within your major. So just take some time to put 2 to 3 classes that you like. Okay, so now you're going to take some time to list out 1 or 2 professors that you have a good relationship with. This is the bullet point that stumps a few students, actually stumps many students, but I really want you to reflect and think on a professor that 1 or 2 professors that you have a good relationship with, whether it was someone that you had an aha moment in class with, or who presented material in a way that just inspired you and really made you invested and learning. Or maybe someone who just, despite being a different field, didn't give up on you and was there to really help you out. So list one or two professors, please. Awesome. So in front of you, you should have a list with ideally 5 strengths, 2 to 3 classes that you've enjoyed, and 1 to 2 professors that you have a good relationship with. Normally, if we were together during a 1-hour presentation here in the office, we would go around and share. It's very important to be able to verbalize these strengths, these classes, these professors. So I really encourage, if you have the opportunity to call up a friend, a family member, and share what you wrote down with them, or even just read it out loud to yourself, because the act of verbalizing your thoughts is very important. And the takeaway with this activity is that, one, it's really important for you to be able to identify your strengths, especially in relation to asking for a letter of recommendation, because oftentimes you need to be able to articulate who you are and what your strengths are to the individual writing you a letter, so they can write you an even better, robust, nuanced, and fleshed out letter. And also, in knowing your strengths, you know your weaknesses, so you're able to work on them as well. 2 to 3 classes you like. When it comes to thinking about asking for letters of recommendation, it can be very intimidating, very daunting. A great way to start it off is to identify 2 to 3 classes that you really enjoy, that you have enjoyed, as potential sources for letters of recommendation, and 1 or 2 professors that you have a good relationship with. Generally, your perception of a good relationship with a professor is generally and typically reciprocated. If you're that student who had always participated, or came to office hours and all of that, most of the time they'll probably remember you. You may be surprised. So by doing that, you've identified potential sources of letters of rec or individuals you can contact. And of course, we will go over this more in depth as we go through this presentation, but this was just a quick activity to get your brain flowing, as you can see. Okay. So whom should you ask for a letter of recommendation? Normally, graduate schools are interested in receiving a letter of rec from describing your academic performance and your potential. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at your academic performance and potential to thrive in graduate school. Thus, you should ask faculty members who can comment on your performance in an academic setting, aka professors who you're taking courses with. Generally, you want to ask faculty in the class in which you got the best grade, ideally an A or a B. Anything below that, I would kind of just stay away from. Even if you have a really good relationship with a professor, you may want to frame that more as a mentor letter versus an academic letter. So kind of like I mentioned, even if you know that professor really well, kind of stay away from classes where you got lower than a B. You should strive for letters that stress different areas of your strength. One question we get a lot is, do all the letters have to be in the same field? Do they have to be in my field or the field that I'm going for? The answer to that question is not necessarily all the time. It depends on the program and it depends on the field. I know that for some fields, it's very specific, and such as kind of like the rehabilitative therapy fields, they really want people like comm disorders who have that experience working with speech language pathologists or taking those type of classes. So it really depends. However, some cases it's very open, and I'll give you an example. If you took Spanish or French or Mandarin classes and you had a really good relationship with that professor, it may be in your benefit to have that professor write you a letter of recommendation, because not only does it not only will the letter reflect, that relationship you have with that professor, but it will reflect a skill set of you being bi or multilingual. And that is very, very beneficial and very much needed in the allied health professions nowadays. So that's just one example. It can be from a different topic area. But generally, you do want letters to be from your field, typically. And if you wish to have an employer, let's say from a psychologically relevant job, and you're wanting to pursue a career in therapy, counseling, it may be in your best benefit to have an internship site manager who currently has a master's in counseling or an MFT, master's of family therapy, write you a letter. Consider using him or her as an extra reference. So remember the 2 to 3, 2 typically tends to be academic. And never, the golden rule, never ever have a family, relative, or minister write you a letter. Just don't have anyone who is related to you or your family write you a letter. There have been cases where if the university does find out, they can rescind or remove your acceptance letter just because it poses a conflict of interest. And of course, the source is taken from Cal State Long Beach. The link is provided right here. This PowerPoint, this Prezi is linked on the Titanium page, so you can access it there. And when you access it there, you can actually go straight to the Cal State Long Beach link, which provides a more robust list of the letters. So how do you get to know faculty? How do I get to know faculty? Look at the opportunity to request the letter of rec as a positive way, or as I often refer to it as nurturing a relationship, nurturing and building up a relationship. I think the idea of asking for a letter of rec is very daunting because we're often taught to not really encroach on anyone else's space or be a nuisance or inconvenience. But if you reframe it and look at it as building a relationship with a future mentor, which at its core is networking, it will change the way that you approach it. And I think that this has helped not only myself, but a lot of others tackle on the really daunting task, or the perceived daunting task of asking for a letter of recommendation. If possible, this is a non-exhaustive list. If possible, participate and engage in class regularly. Raise your hand, give your thought on something, ask a question. Most of the time, what you're thinking or the question that you want to be asked and answered, someone else is thinking it too. So that's one way. And I know that extroverts have it easy because we can just be like, well, Professor X, Y, and Z, can you explain this further? If you're more introverted, you can ask the professor after class or before class. Ask them during their office hours. Go to office hours. You don't have to go every week. At least pop by once or twice a semester. And especially if you are going to be asking for a letter of rec, you may want to be frequent. And it could just simply be a hi, how are you? How was your day? Just want to update you. I have a question about the syllabus. X, Y, and Z professors are there at office hours to assist you. Another great way is to ask the professor about any of their research. Academics love talking about themselves in the context of what they're studying. They devoted their lives to studying a topic area, a focus area, or a few topic areas. Ask them about it, and you can see them light up. This is a really great way to kind of get to know them and try to link yourself to any potential research areas or interests that they may have. Seek out opportunities to help their professor with the research. And so after you ask them about what they research, you may want to ask them, is there any opportunity that you can help them with the data they're examining, or maybe edit some papers or clean up just little kind of clerical tasks or administrative tasks that you may have. This is a really great way to buff up your resume, your CV and resume, as well as get hands-on experience and to nurture that relationship. Or if you're already working with a professor on a research project, this is a great opportunity. You may want to really consider them as a letter of rec as well. After the course is done, look up additional courses taught by that faculty member. You don't have to take every single class they're teaching, but it is in your best favor to take at least more than one with them, at least two, to really get on their radar and to show them you're committed to learning. And this oftentimes can be really easy within your department if you're asking a professor within your department, because oftentimes faculty will have to teach multiple classes in undergrad. And email them periodically. Let's say you're not taking them this semester, but you can take them during summer session or next fall. Email them periodically. One tip I always give is it just be like, oh, hi, Dr. So-and-so. I'm just checking in to see how you're doing this semester. I came across this article talking about trauma and football injuries, and I saw that they discussed this amongst it was a study amongst high school students, and I know that you've done a lot of interventions with high school students. I would love to have your thoughts on it. Looking forward to hear back, Chad. Great way to tap in. Send an article, ask them a question, ask them for their thoughts on something. It's a great way to just check in, and you can do this periodically. It doesn't have to be every week. I would actually say don't do it every week, but just here and there just to keep tabs. This obviously works more better when you aren't taking a professor anymore. But if you are, you could still send them an article and get their thoughts on it. They just may be very busy. So how do you approach faculty about asking for a letter of recommendation? Like I mentioned before, look at this as a networking, relationship building opportunity. Hopefully throughout your undergrad, you have had the chance at least to get to know one or two professors, faculty members well enough, whether it's on a faculty research project or involvement in small classes. And then on top of it, those individuals would be really great to start off with, just as how you listed in the first activity. However, if you don't have anyone that comes to mind, start with a professor that you like. You know, if you haven't worked with a professor, start with a professor that something about their personality really vibes with you or jives with you. And like I mentioned before, the faculty member does not have to be in your field. A perfect example, I went to UCI for my undergrad. My first winter quarter back in 2000, it was winter quarter 2011. That just really aged me right now. I took a Chicano Studies 101 course with a professor who would turn out to be a mentor for me and a friend now that I'm out of UCI. My mind was blown. I had taken the class just in an elective, just get out of the way. And I ended up really enjoying it. So throughout my 4 or 5 years at UCI, I took every other elective she taught. And I took it with the intention of, because I really enjoyed the material. I took it with the intent of learning more because I really enjoyed the material, but also that I identified this professor as a individual who could potentially write me a letter of recommendation, in which she has written me so many letters in the end of recommendation. And even though I am a public health scholar and student, Chicano studies and the understanding of ethnic studies definitely relates, because public health is a study of populations and the prevention of ideally disease. And as we know, certain communities of color are afflicted more so than ever. So the way I framed it was that my understanding of Chicano studies and taking these ethnic studies, having an ethnic studies lens, it allowed me to critically examine the issues that are affecting communities of color. Completely different field, but tied in nonetheless. And me and this professor and I, we have a great relationship. We check in probably every other month with a simple email. And we've developed, we go get coffee and catch up, and it's a really great, it's been really great to foster this relationship and this networking opportunity at the end of the day. Because in the future, she will probably write me more letters of recommendation if I ever need her to. And so you could start with engaging and participating in class. Like I mentioned before, speak up, ask questions, express your thoughts, go to office hours, take other classes with the same faculty, and don't be afraid to ask once that relationship is established. You may want to approach the faculty in a way that is, it can either be very direct, you can let them know, depending on your personality, if you want a letter of recommendation, and you're thinking about having them write you a letter of recommendation, or you can kind of be like low key about it and like drop signals and messages during those office hour meetings. Like, oh, I'm looking at grad programs. Was it hard for you applying? Could you share a little bit? This ties into informational interviewing, which is another video that is a part of the series that you may want to check out if you haven't. And I would say be timely. You want to ask 3 to 4 months in advance. I think it's kind of a golden rule. The earlier, the better, but not too far ahead where they're going to forget, because professors are people and they are busy and they have responsibilities, and letters of recommendation and the writing of these letters is essentially a big favor that's being done. So kind of look at it from the lens. Someone is helping you out, so you want to make it as easy as possible for them. And so the best practice to approaching for letter rec, from what I've found in my experience, and people will tell you different things, but this is what I found. Person, electronic, phone. Always go in person. Ask in person. Always, always, always ask in person. There's just that human connection, and I feel like the in person is just kind of the appropriate way to go about it, since you're asking for such a major thing. If you cannot, electronic would be nice too, and or the phone. But if you can, just aim for person. Always ask in person. So when should I ask a faculty member to write a letter rec? Remember, they're really busy. So 3 to 4 months in advance. Generally suggested if you're going to ask really close to at least 6 weeks before. Take time to explain to the faculty your goals, intent, and reasons for applying. Hopefully this has been, you've been able to sprinkle all of this throughout your interactions with the professor, throughout that relationship. However, you are going to want to present them with your goals. Like, look, I'm an undergrad majoring in health science. I want to switch over to social work because I realize I want to help individuals who are dealing with co-occurring disorders, so mental illness as well as addiction. My intent is to be enrolled by next fall into a Master's of Social Work program here in Southern California. And reasons for applying, I took a couple of your courses in human services as electives, and it really inspired me, and I want to continue doing this work. There you go. Perfect example. And after you ask them and they say yes, periodically remind them of the deadline. I'm going to give you my secret tip when it comes to letters of rec or any other deadline where you're asking something from someone. I call it the faux deadline. And it's going to save you a lot of stress if you stick to this. If you know a deadline for an application is, let's say, January 15th, when you ask the letter of rec writer to write you a letter of rec and they say yes, give them a faux deadline. Say, I need this letter by December 15th. And so ideally you would have already asked in September, late September, early October, and let them know, I need this letter by December 15th. For whatever reason, maybe you want to turn it in early or kind of review material, but let them know you want to turn it in early and give them that deadline. This will save you a lot of stress because I have heard horror stories from friends who gave the professor the actual deadline and didn't get that letter until the day of. Can you imagine how stressful that is? So this is my way, or this is my little kind of genius way of cutting stress, and it works. It works because once you have the letter of recommendation in your possession, it makes things so much easier. So what makes it easier for your letter of rec writer? Remember that writing a letter of recommendation takes time, and letter of rec writers are busy. So you want to make the process easy for them. You want to make it convenient, quick, and simple. You don't want to inundate them with more work to do. So ask the faculty member how they would prefer to receive your information. So you're going to ask them if just to write a letter of rec, they say yes, and then you're going to provide them with a packet of information about the programs, about you as a person. Sometimes professors will want it in an email. Sometimes they will want it physically. Sometimes they will want it both. If they say they want it physically, I would also follow up with an email just to be safe so it's there on electronic record. And you have to be mindful that some applications will require physical documents to be signed. So you will have to, no matter what, depending on the school, turn in a physical document to that professor. And something to be very mindful of is that in all the letter of recommendation applications, whether it's electronic or forms, whether it's electronic or physical, there will be one form that asks that it's a waiver form. Basically what this form, no matter what university you're applying for, it'll ask you that for you to release your consent and sign that you have not in any way seen the letter that person or the individuals writing you letters, you have not influenced that or read it or anything of that nature. My advice to you when you see this, always waive your rights. This shows to the university and communicates to them that you did not write your letter and then have the professor sign it. You didn't read the letter. And it's kind of falls into an ethical and moral question. Just waive it. It's more so in your favor that way. And so that packet I talked about, what do you provide in that packet? So you're going to provide that packet. You're going to have a draft of your personal statement, which is another workshop that we offer here at Allied Health Academy. If you haven't finished your personal statement, it's fine. Send whatever you have. If you haven't even started it and you're still working on it, I would say draft up a few bullet points or a simple paragraph or two of who you are, where you're from, what you want to do, the work you've done, kind of like a cover letter. You want to include your resume or CV. A CV stands for curriculum vitae. It's essentially your academic resume. You're going to print out program information. Go on the page, copy the few paragraphs about the program. Include that as well. Include an unofficial transcript so the professor can know your GPA. And I would highlight the courses that you've taken with this specific individual so they can get a refresher of what courses you were in. And also include a simple thank you note. I'm huge on thank you cards. I would say include a simple thank you note within the packet. Or if you're sending it electronically, drop off a thank you note. Thank you, Professor so-and-so. I really appreciate you supporting me in my efforts to pursue graduate school. And I appreciate you writing me a letter of recommendation. It's very important. Also, give the faculty a faux deadline, as I mentioned in the previous slide, and always write a thank you card once everything has been submitted and turned in. Go to Target, $4 or $5, pick up a pack of 10 thank you cards. It's in the card section, and there's a lot of different types of designs and typefaces. Find something that fits you as a person and write the thank you card. It's very important. It seals the deal. It nurtures that relationship, and they will remember you. And it would be a very great kind of setting up a foundation for future letters of recommendation. So, a professor's perspective. This is a little dense. It's taken from Brandeis University, which is on the East Coast. And a professor wrote a letter about his or her perspective on a recommendation. So we'll read this right now. So pretend for a minute that you're a college professor. 2 students have come in to ask you for letters of recommendation. The first student got a solid A on your exam, attended class religiously, and took copious notes, though you did not hear from him in class very much, in fact, hardly at all. He never asked you for anything and did not seek help outside of class. The second student got only an A- on the exam. She too attended every class, and took notes diligently. She was also a very vocal participant in class, was prepared with questions that reflected her consideration of the material, and sought you out during office hours. So, who do you write the letter for? If you're me, you write for the second student. Even if she didn't receive the highest grade in the class, surprised? You shouldn't be. There's a lot that goes into a professor's decision to write a letter of recommendation. And that might seem scary because it's the one part of the interview process that's completely out of your control. Or is it? In my many years of teaching, I have written dozens of letters, and I've discovered that students can take steps to ensure that you get the glowing recommendation that will seal the deal. I can't stress enough how important recommendations are. They are basically viewed from kind of the admissions panel as insight into who the student is from a professor's perspective, or whoever's writing it, their perspective, to see if the student, if you can thrive in the field. This little example highlights that the second student necessarily didn't have the best grade in class, but she was a participant. She came, she was engaged, she was there, she was present, she was intentional. So she got a really good letter. So this, if anything, this should really drive and highlight the point of what we covered, that try as much as you can to participate and engage in classes and with that professor. And final tips. I know culturally that as a first generation students of color, we face so many different things, and it can be very uncomfortable to ask for help or to ask someone to do something for you, do a favor for you. It may go against our whole upbringing or everything you've been told your whole life. And it comes from kind of a thought process or a fear of encroaching on another space. You know, keep your side of the street clean, stick to yourself, don't bug anyone else. I really want you to start to undo that process. It's going to be a very complex process, but just start and reframe it as like this. You're going to need to be your own biggest advocate, period. If you plan to go off and help other people in your career and advocate for them, you need to know how to advocate for yourself first. Because if you can't advocate for yourself, how the heck do you expect to advocate for others? And advocating for yourself is participating, acting, asking, doing things that are going to be positive for you, positive and healthy for you and your trajectory and your career and your goals and meeting those goals. So really reframe it, change the lens, flip it, be your biggest advocate. It's only going to help you help yourself, and it's going to help you help other people in a much more deeper and profound way. I promise you that. View letters of recommendation as relationship building experiences. Don't look at it as, I'll put it this way. A lot of students say, well, won't the professor know I'm using them? I would get rid of that type of thought process because it's a relationship building experience. And if you are genuine and you've engaged and you're just being yourself and you have articulated these thoughts and your goals to that professor, they will see right through it. You know when someone's being fake with you, someone knows, and other people generally know when you're being fake with them. So if you're coming from a genuine place, it's not going to read that way. So I really encourage you to get on it and really kind of undo that thought process and start planning early so you're not stressed out on time. Plan early, please. And overall, I hope this presentation was very helpful. Remember, advocate for yourself. Look at this as relationship building experience, and don't be afraid to ask for a letter of recommendation. You might be very surprised of how easy it is, and get used to it, because in your career, you're going to have to learn how to ask for a lot of help, and it's completely okay. Anyways, have a great day, everyone, and hopefully this helped out a lot.